Hello, everyone. We have a fascinating topic to explore how our DNA can affect our responsiveness to stress, nutrients, and food. We are going to be talking about this with Maya Petrova. Maya is a holistic nutritionist and a DNA Life certified practitioner in UK. I am Amita from Nourish Talk, a global platform for natural and holistic therapies. I'd like to introduce all of you to Maya Petrova, who's joining us live from UK right now. Welcome, Maya.
Welcome. Thank you very much as well. Thank you for the introduction, and hello everyone who's watching and joining us today.
Okay, so this is really a fascinating topic about DNA testing. So let's just get started now.
Yes, of course. Yes, indeed. This is quite a fascinating topic. It's very interesting. It's very complex at the same time. So I'm going to try and explain it as simple as possible in a way that everyone can understand how exactly our genetics can affect our nutrition, our well-being. There will be a few complex terms throughout the presentation. There will be a bit of science so that we can understand it in a bit more detail, so we can see the science behind it. But overall, I've tried my best to simplify this side of health because it is quite complex. And of course, if there are questions throughout the presentation, I can answer them later. It's a bit harder when we don't actually have a case. I mean, for example, we don't have someone whose DNA test we can analyze, but I've done my best to show in the presentation what can happen if we have genes that kind of predisposes to not having a good antioxidant response. So we're going to talk about oxidative stress, antioxidants. So how many antioxidants do we need to take? Do we respond well to stress, to oxidative stress? We're going to talk about that throughout the presentation. And of course, we're going to see how different nutrients such as caffeine, lactose, dairy affect our well-being, and could that be genetic? So starting with the first topic to explore, personalized healthcare. That's the main thing DNA testing allows us to do. So here it is important to get the idea that the effect of nutrition on health and disease cannot be understood without this deep understanding of how different nutrients act at a molecular level. And this is exactly what we can do with DNA testing. As you can see on the slide, we have different dietary guidelines at the moment, but overall we have this generalization about what to eat, how to sleep, what nutrients we need. It's quite generalized at the moment. And overall it works for some people, but we get this handful of people who don't feel well when they follow the general guidelines. So we have this consumer group at the end of the slide, which is not feeling well following what's supposed to be healthy, and they might actually be harmed by following certain supposedly healthy guidelines. So what we can see here is that we have this sort of intra-individual variability response. So everyone is different to the different dietary interventions that we can do. It's very well documented in our research, in my clinical practice as well, that people respond differently to different nutrients. And beside the effect of age and gender, we also have the effect of genetics. And it has become increasingly important nowadays to see how this can affect our health. And bottom line here is one size does not and cannot fit one at all. So that's what we can learn from everything said so far. And if we move to the next slide, what we see is how our genes actually interact with the environment. So we have our genotype. We all have our genotype. And then what we have on the other side is the environment. So if we take, for example, an optimum environment, and we have gene expression, which is also optimum, then we're going to get an optimum phenotype. Phenotype that's what we call the observable characteristics everyone has And these characteristics that we all have, they are all resulting from our interaction of the gene and the environment. So the way our genetics interact with the environment we are in creates this phenotype, which is individual for each of us. And our health is actually that result of the interplay between the genotype and the phenotype. The genotype and the environment. So the environment here includes the lifestyle factors. So our lifestyle interacts with the genes, and then we get the phenotype, which is actually our health. So what we can do here is adjusting the diet and the lifestyle, so we can control the impact our environment will have on our genes, and make sure we can have good health. So basically, if we have genes that are predisposing us to certain diseases, that doesn't mean we're going to get these diseases. It means that we have just a predisposition. But if we can affect the environment with different lifestyle modifications, we may not express this gene. So our phenotype may not produce that disease. So moving to the next slide, I will try and explain to you just in a simplified way how actually that works with just this, this kind of image. Usually helps my patients understand the genetics a bit better. It's a funny picture, but it kind of communicates the importance of genes so that people can see the bigger picture here. So imagine this dam. So if you follow now the picture, what we can see if you follow the downstream. So the downstream, which is on the right hand side on my slide, on my side. So on the right hand side, we have this downstream, and it's an upstream of stuff that is coming to interact with the dam. So we can kind of say that the upstream is our lifestyle. So we now have this dam, and the interaction will determine how much flow, how much water will go on the other side, will go down. So if the water goes down too much, we might have the area flooded. So if the whole area gets flooded, we have a bad situation. And this is usually the analogy of disease in the body. So if the whole area gets flooded, we get disease. So when we get disease, that's, when the water comes up to the land and it's, all flooding everywhere. And some people might pop a pill, that's what, in this case, practically, for example, people would put sandbags to stop the water. So in our case, we don't put sandbags, stop the water. We put the pill or, some sort of medication to just stop the disease. So that's kind of the equivalent of what happens on the other side. So basically, the analogy here shows that showing the sandbag won't resolve anything. We won't be able to affect the dam. We won't be able to understand what has happened to, get to that stage of having everything, being flooded. And that dam, which we see on the picture, actually portrays our individual interaction with the environment, which is the upstream. So we have all these things that we can control. We have our environment, at least most of them we can control the environment. And how much water gets through the dam, it's decided by the genes. So how much the environment is going to affect the way we are, the body, it's all decided by, by this dam or by the genes. So this lifestyle environmental interaction with the genes determines the predictability, of the ability to control the flow which comes. And, here, basically with this analogy, I wanted to show that it's about creating this sort of disease resilience and disease avoidance when we talk about genes. So we have the environment, the upstream, we have the dam, which is in a way showing the genes. They decide how much water gets through, and then we might get the area flooded, so we might get disease. But the whole idea of DNA analysis is teaching us how to create this disease resilience and disease avoidance, so we don't get the whole area flooded. how I hope that kind of makes it a bit easier to understand. So now, of course, we kind of understood what genes are and how they can affect our health. So what can we do about it? And that's where we have nutritional genomics, nutrigenetics, and nutrigenomics, which are what I call the future of true healthcare. Nutritional genomics, this is the science of studying the relationship between the human genome, nutrition, environment, and health. As you can see on the picture, we've got the different snippets in our DNA, and they can really, in our lifestyle, can really determine how they're gonna get expressed. So this is the way, I sort of see the future of, healthcare and our well-being. So to kind of give you examples of how this actually affects our health, just to kind of see a bit more of how it all happens in the body, we're now going to look at stress. We talked about it last time when we had the interview. We talked about moderate stress and how this affects our health. So we're going to look into that in the next slide. So we can just revisit the issue again. We talked about the modern day stressors, which could be emotional, nutritional, chemical, psychological, hormonal. What is important here to remember is that the body responds identically to all stresses. The body cannot differentiate between the different types of stress. However, stress can affect different people in different ways. It depends on your composition. It depends on your physical, mental, emotional well-being when the stress enters your life. And then, as most of us know, then the effects on our health are sometimes very detrimental. It increases fat levels, blood pressure, our insulin sensitivity, blood sugar, appetite, and eventually can lead to disease. It's also very important to remember that our nervous system is actually not built to handle long-term stress. We are built to manage short-term stressors in the form of food hunting or running away from predators. That's how the whole nervous system is built to function. But what we have today in our modern world is chronic stress. And I'll give you a bit more examples of what is actually the chronic stress. That's just going to move on the next slide. So you're going to see on the next slide, the chronic stress is caused by the so-called modern day stressors. We have the lack of sleep, poor food choices, the use of stimulants that could be in the form of caffeine, energy drinks, these sort of very common situations when people are pulling all-nighters or pushing through a day despite being tired. Now we're going to have the stress in our personal life as well, overbearing boss or high family demands, the electromagnetic stress and watching the news, having fearful thoughts, negative thoughts, lack of self-love, very high levels of self-criticism. This is all internal stress. Like perfectionism, very common thing I see in my clients today is overtraining, thinking that too much exercise can help you lose more weight. Staying in no-win situations for too long. We talked about it in our last session. When we have relationships which are toxic, that kind of goes with not enough me time and not enough stress relieving practices. And of course, it's life events, losing a loved one. These are all part of today's stressors. And basically, with stress, we have oxidative stress. We can see on the next slide as well. The kind of main area we're gonna move into now is oxidative stress. As I said earlier, the problem of stress wouldn't be as an issue today if we weren't compounding many stressors over the course of days, weeks, months, and years without enough downtime. So that's the main reason why we have this chronic stress creation. And of course, stress will produce free radicals. And in the body, free radicals are the byproduct of the body's energy generating biochemical processes. free radicals are highly reactive with other molecules. They can damage our DNA, they can damage proteins and cellular membranes. So the reason why I want to cover oxidative stress when it comes to DNA testing is because in a perfect world, we would have, perfect dietary antioxidant coverage, which is going to repair the minor reactive oxygen species that are created in the body, so we can end up with minor DNA damage. That's in the perfect world. We would get enough antioxidants so we can repair the body and damage to our DNA is minor. It's very important not to have damage to the DNA because that's about, future generations. If there's damage to the DNA, then that gets passed to future generations and more disease is formed afterwards. However, as we said earlier, because we live in such high stress environments, our life is not that perfect. We rarely get the perfect coverage of antioxidants that the body needs. So now we have the opposite. Quite often we get the so-called toxic environments where we have, lots of toxins from different chemicals, and this creates high toxic load on the body. And of course, as a result, we're going to have greater reactive oxygen species and of course, greater DNA damage. So that's how the situation sort of works at the moment. And the wisdom we can get from DNA testing is this ability to be able to examine and begin to manage the oxidative stress and how our body reacts to it. So now, as we can see on this slide, here's what causes oxidative stress in the body. So as you can see, this is the production of free radicals in the body, and it can be upregulated by different lifestyle factors. Sedentary lifestyle, smoking, unbalanced diet, cellular respiration, other environmental toxins. This can all create the free radical species. And we have the oxygen-free radical. So that oxygen-free radical is not good for the body. So we need to have enzymes, antioxidants, to convert it to something which is harmless to the body. So what we can see in the pictures are these abbreviations of SOD, CAT, and the other one on the right, which is glutathione peroxidase. So these enzymes will act on the oxygen and will convert it in hydrogen peroxide, then further to water and oxygen, which are then harmless to the body. So that's the whole idea of having these antioxidants. And the antioxidants we see here, these are actually made by the body. So I'll show you in the next slide how they are pronounced, a bit more about their names. So as you can see on the picture, we have the antioxidant molecule, which will go to the free radical and deactivate it. So it's not a reactive molecule anymore, and it cannot damage the healthy cell. And for this to happen, we need the antioxidants. Antioxidants are our free radical scavengers, and they will interact with the free radical to ensure it is no longer a reactive molecule. So in the body, we have the antioxidants in the form of enzymes. So the first one is superoxidase dismutase. We have glutathione peroxidase, glutathione reductase, and catalases. So these are all our own body enzymes. And of course, we've all heard about antioxidants from food, mainly from vegetables and fruits. So it's important here that we create this balance between oxidation and antioxidation. And this is believed to be critical in maintaining health of all the systems in the body. When it comes to dietary antioxidants, we all know about vitamin C, vitamin E, selenium, carotenoids, polyphenols. They're all very important. And our antioxidant defense is mainly fulfilled by our own enzymes. So the dietary antioxidants come second. First, is important to make sure the antioxidant enzymes in our body work well. And this is what DNA testing can show us, whether they work well, they function well, or not exactly. So on the next slide, it's kind of the most complex part of the whole presentation. It seems complex, but I'll only explain to you what's important to know in terms of how oxidative stress works in the body and where these antioxidants, these enzymes work, just so we can understand their importance and what happens. So what you can see on the left-hand side, we've got the oxygen molecule. So when oxygen comes into the body, it is used to accomplish, among other things, the functioning, first of all, of our electron transport system. So this system is actually the final stage of aerobic respiration, and it is our main source of ATP production. So it's our main source of energy. So first of all, of course, oxygen will be used for energy. It's vital for the life of our cells. And oxygen is also very important because it interacts with another system in the body. It is the cytochrome P450 system, and this is a group of enzymes which is actually involved in the metabolism of drugs. And it's, this enzyme is found in high levels in the liver. So again, oxygen is important for this process as well. But at the end of the day, it will end up as a byproduct of the normal functioning of the body. And what we're gonna get here is a free radical. So we've got the first free radical in the body, which is created from this interaction. And this is the superoxide. So we can see in the middle, after oxygen, we've got the first free radical, superoxide. Now, when this superoxide is created, as we said earlier, we need to have an enzyme to act upon it so it can be deactivated. So when it is created, again, it's normal for the body. This creation will activate our first enzyme. This is SOD, or superoxide dismutase. So this enzyme will then convert the oxygen, the superoxide free radical, to hydrogen peroxide. So now, again, we have the next level. We can see it all in the middle. After hydrogen peroxide, we have the next antioxidant from the body coming. This is the enzyme catalase. So now, thanks to catalase and then glutathione peroxidase, which is further down on the right, this molecule will be converted to water and oxygen. So they will be harmless to the body. So this whole process kind of shows how important these enzymes are. So thanks to these three, we now have the water as an end product, and this is harmless to the body. However, what will happen if SOD, the SOD is not functioning properly? So if this happens, of course, we're not going to be able to make that conversion very well. So in that case, if that superoxide is not converted properly to hydrogen peroxide, because maybe, as I said, SOD is not working well from a genetic standpoint, does not mean it's not working at all. It just means it's low functioning. The body needs to find a different way to deactivate this free radical. So it's very important just to kind of mention here that all these enzymes we're talking about, they have very specific important duties within our oxidative stress pathway. And they can just be low functioning. It's not like they are not working, they just have low function. So if, let's say, for example, SOD is not functioning properly, the body will find a different way. So the body can use the cofactors, which are the gasoline that makes these enzymes work. So if we have cofactors, we're going to talk about them later. So if we have certain cofactors in place, then even if our genetics are not very good, they will still work. However, the opposite is also true. Even if our genes are working well, functioning well, if the cofactors are not present or they're not available enough, then these enzymes are not going to function so well again. So basically, as I said earlier, the body will find a different way to kind of handle this situation if genetically we have low functioning enzymes. So the body, if these three enzymes, for example, are not operating correctly, then superoxide, then with the help of excess nitric oxide, which is on the top, in the middle on the top, can combine and make peroxynitrate. This is another molecule that will be created. However, it's actually harmless for the body. It can create lipid peroxidation. It can damage our proteins. So it's not quite good to have the body using excess nitric oxide to create this molecule. So then we also have a third option. So if catalase, for example, is not working well, body will go to option number 3. Superoxide will be converted to hydroxyl radical, as well as hydrogen peroxide again, which is in the middle down here. We can see the hydroxyl radical and the hydrogen. Here we can again do something about it. So if catalase or glutathione peroxidase are not functioning, then we can actually help the body create water as the end product by using hydrogen as a supplement or hydrogen water. So again, if these enzymes are not working properly, the body has different ways to combat that. But in these situations, as I said earlier, one of the molecules is kind of harmful to the body, while hydroxyl radical is actually with zero purpose. So what we need to do here is ensure the proper functioning of these. That's kind of the bottom line. Many things can go wrong with these enzymes, but creating an axis of free radicals will actually disturb every single process in the body. It will impair mating system. So it's very important for us to make sure these enzymes work properly and we're not having high oxidative stress in the body. We've all heard about methylation. Methylation is what regulates the absorption and synthesis of vitamin B and many other processes. It's important for our cardiovascular, neurological, reproductive health, and detoxification. So again, yes, it is a very complex process for us. As we've seen it, as I've explained, it seems quite complex, but for our body, it's quite normal. So it's actually, about optimizing the antioxidants in our body, making sure they work properly. That's all we can do. That's our role. It's complex for us. It's normal for the body, but it's just about optimizing them. And that's, as I said earlier, normally done after having the DNA test. So you can see which one of these enzymes is having low function. And when I know which is having the low function, we can then use the cofactors to change that. So on the next slide, I'll show you the different cofactors we can use. So the cofactors come from food. For SOD, as you can see on the slide, we actually have 3 types of superoxide. We have 1, 2, and 3, and it just depends on where they are in the body. So SOD1 is cytosolic, so it's within the cell, and it's dependent upon copper and zinc. Mitochondrial is SOD2, it's dependent on manganese. SOD is extracellular, it's dependent upon copper and zinc. Then the glutathione peroxidase is selenium dependent, and selenium dependent, and catalase is dependent upon iron. We also have the inos, which is the part where we talked about the nitric oxide. So when it comes to the nitric oxide sort of pathway, then for the body, it's important to have good levels of choline, arginine, and citrulline. And of course, we can all get them from natural sources. It's not always about supplementation. With selenium, you've got the Brazil nuts. With iron, the dark green vegetables and red meat. Nitric oxide, melons and beets. Copper, beef, liver, sunflower seeds, lentils. zinc with beef, kidney beans, flax seeds, manganese from leafy greens, fruit, and shellfish. So for me as a nutritionist will be important to ensure the person have the optimum levels of these cofactors so we can have the enzymes working properly. Sometimes, of course, supplementation just all depends. And on the next slide, I'll just show you how the genes actually sort of come on your test. So this is the terminology that we use when we analyze genes, just so you can grasp what happens in the body. So on the top, we can see the wild type. So here we all know that we're getting one set of chromosomes from mom and one from dad, and they sort of run and turn together. They have this sort of interplay, and on each side of these genetic strands, we can have the same type. As you can see in the wild type, we can have the same type, and this is known as the wild type, and it's actually the most common one. Or we can have the most common one on the second level, the most common one, and we can have an uncommon variable, meaning that we have a single nucleotide polymorphism, and that is called hetero, so meaning different. So we have something different, the heterozygote, and we can have a pair of the most unusual combination. That's the most uncommon, the most unusual one in these single nucleotide polymorphisms, and it would be the homozygote. And what we can see here is that we have these three different combinations in our genes, and we cannot say which one is advantageous and which one is disadvantageous. It just all depends on the situation and what we're looking at. So as we've talked about it so far, it's just important to have these enzymes working properly. So we're going to look now on the next slide into SOD and superoxide dismutase. So as you can see, the superoxide free radical is what can be deactivated by this enzyme. And we talked about, SOD1 and SOD3 all being dependent on copper and zinc, but SOD2 is also very important to know that this is actually the one which destroys free radicals that are normally produced by the cell itself. And here we can have different variations. So as I told you on the previous slide, we can have the wild type. And the wild type has a very high impact, which means that this SOD here is less functioning. It's a very common occurrence, but it's less functioning. So for me, as an analyst, this means I need to support this person with more manganese, zinc, and copper, because the body is telling me, look, my SOD is not functioning optimally. So my ability to deactivate the free radicals produced by the cell itself, I mean, every single cell produces free radicals. So that's telling me it's not optimum. So by giving the body more cofactors, we're going to improve that function. So it's precious knowledge. Of course, we can also give SOD as a supplement. It just depends. But it's just important to increase antioxidant intake from food because the body's ability to dismantle these oxidants, these free radicals is lower, as we said. And sometimes we just need to take SOD as a supplement. It just depends, because if the person has many health symptoms and have other deficiencies, sometimes just taking the cofactors is not enough. Sometimes it might be better just to take SOD itself. So it really depends, but it's very, very important knowledge. And why is it important? Well, I'll just kind of remind you on the next slide again about the superoxide free radical. So as I said at the beginning, the superoxide free radical, this is a highly toxic and it considered to be a major contributor to aging. So the ladies out there, if you want to have the youth, look on your face to combat aging, it's really important to make sure that you have enough inner ammunition to kind of dismantle the superoxide. It's biologically toxic, and it is deployed also by the immune system to kill invading microorganisms. It is also contributing factor to many diseases, cardiovascular disease, inflammatory diseases, even cancers. So it's also capable of damaging our DNA, the proteins, the lipids, and we really need to know how our genes impact our ability to deactivate this free radical. So it's just another reinforcement of this before we move to the next slide, where I'll talk about the glutathione peroxidase. So this one is the most abundant of the selenium peroxidases, and it is one of the most important ones when it comes to our antioxidant enzymes. It is expressed in almost all tissues in the body, and it is responsible for catalyzing the conversion of hydrogen peroxide into water, as we saw earlier in the graph. So here, if we have the wild type, the most common one, there is no impact, nothing to worry about. And then we can have the moderate and the high impact. So if we have someone with the high impact, then that means that we have the decreased function of these enzymes. And usually when we have the decreased function, this will also have our disturbed antioxidant balance. So when people have this combination, they also have an increased risk for chronic disease, certain cancers, and coronary artery disease. And also, it's important to note here that some people might have the moderate impact. Quite often I get people with the moderate impact and they're quite confused because they're somewhere in the middle. So here it depends on the symptoms. So it depends on what's happening with that person. So if I'm dealing with a patient exhibiting symptoms of fatigue, not well-functioning detoxification, maybe problems with skin as well, it's gonna tell me that something's kind of off with the person's ability to detoxify, to use antioxidants if the person's skin is not looking healthy, not looking youthful. Also people, with breast cancer as well, or kind of cysts somewhere in the body, something is telling me that the antioxidants are not working well. So in that case, we might consider upregulating the intake of antioxidants, especially selenium. So because it's selenium dependent, of course, very important to check selenium levels here. And of course, to modify, lifestyle changes if there's alcohol consumption and, other environmental changes. And of course, emphasize on the intake of selenium from natural sources, Brazil nuts, sardines. It will depend on the person. So that's the second enzyme. And the third one is the catalase. On the next slide, we're gonna see more information about catalase. So we saw its great responsibility in converting the hydrogen peroxide to water and oxygen. So catalase is expressed in the liver, in the kidney, and the red blood cells. If we have decreased activity of these enzymes, that's usually associated with high oxidative stress, coronary artery disease, diabetes, and neurodegeneration. So not a good one to have not functioning properly. And it's important here to understand as well about catalase. So if we have the wild type, we usually have moderate impact, which means that the wild type will have catalase at a low function. And on the contrary, if we have someone with the CC type, it's going to be beneficial and upregulated. So we might actually get a person which will have catalase upregulated, so actually functioning properly. And, that kind of answers the question why some people, why we might have two people doing the same diet, the same lifestyle, but one of them looks better than the other, kind of more youthful, usually because one of the antioxidant enzymes works better. And here, very important to notice as well, people who have catalase working at low levels, usually associated with breast cancer. So I've seen that in many people with breast cancer, catalase not working properly. So again, very important knowledge to have. And on the next slide, again, I'm emphasizing again how critical it is to have catalase functioning properly, because it is found in nearly every living organism on the planet that is exposed to oxygen. It is the antioxidant enzyme that can catalyze the conversion of hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. And it's important also to say that it has the highest rate of turnover. So catalase can change 14 million molecules of hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen in just 1 second. So it's just so crucial. And if we can see any sort of deficiency of this enzyme or the cofactors for this enzyme, that can destroy our DNA. So it's not good at all. So overall, it might seem complex, but it is very simple. Check with the DNA testing, you're gonna check these enzymes working properly. That's gonna give me the knowledge. And then I'm gonna tell you which cofactors to check, zinc, selenium, manganese, copper, iron, they can be checked through different tests. And then we do the nutritional therapy, the nutrigenomics. We use food and supplements to help you make sure these genes do not make your life harder, do not affect your health in a negative way. So it's just very, very precious. So that was about oxidative stress. I mean, if anyone has questions or want to know more, it's usually when someone has the information from their test, and then we can decide what to do. So a kind of easier topic and a bit more interesting for some people is actually the understanding of how different foods, different nutrients can affect their health and whether that is genetic. So the next topic is our food responsiveness. So here is the knowledge that particular nutrients and certain food components can affect individuals in different ways, which means that specific genes can actually be tested and give us more insight to how an individual might respond to a particular food component. So we're going to see what I mean in the next slide with our first food component, a very common one found in dairy products, lactose. So lactose intolerance. I mean, many people say I don't eat dairy because people say so. It's like this huge topic in the wellness industry to be dairy free. But why should we all be dairy free? Well, it really depends. Some people are genetically predisposed to be intolerant to lactose. So it's a very common condition where the body has this decreased ability to produce lactose, that's sugar found in dairy. And some people have symptoms like abdominal cramps, bloating, distension, flatulence, diarrhea. So the person is not able to digest dairy products well. We can do nutritional interventions here. So as a nutritionist, I might prescribe lactase as an enzyme or recommend that the person kind of eats dairy less often during the week and preferably from fermented products, or some people do quite well with raw dairy. So again, from your genes, we can understand whether dairy is good for you or not. Also, next one, another common, loved by many, caffeine. So you can see on the next slide about our caffeine response. So there is actually a way to understand how caffeine affects our body because it is metabolized by a particular enzyme in our body, and with our genes we can see how well our body metabolizes caffeine. So some individuals, they have an increased risk for heart disease, spikes in their blood pressure in response to drinking coffee. I'm actually one of them, and I can vouch for this. I used to love drinking coffee, had no problems in my youth, but later I found out that when I get too much of it, my blood pressure spikes and I might get sick and feel very, very unwell. And that's just because my body genetically cannot metabolize caffeine well. So yes, coffee is good, but for some people, not so good for others. So again, precious knowledge from our genes. And again, more about another food that we all love to consume on the next slide. Very, very healthy one indeed, polyunsaturated fatty acid metabolism. So we know about the good fats that are found in nuts, oils, seeds. However, some people may have problems with them. So our polyunsaturated fatty acids, the omega-3 and the omega-6, we all know that they play important roles in brain function, mood regulation, and our immunity. They're very important for our health. However, it's important to have balanced fatty acids intake, and that will also be determined. So how balanced should be your fatty acid intake is determined by our genes, by our genetic makeup. So some people actually might need to avoid vegetable oils and sunflower oils, for example, and emphasize their omega-3s. So yes, nuts are good for you. Sunflower seeds are brilliant, but for some people, they may not be very good. So individuals like that may have the recommendation of eating fatty fish not twice a week, but 3 or more times per week, or have supplements from omega-3. So again, it's really different. And on the next slide, the last food component that we test when it comes to DNA analysis is SOD, our SOD sensitivity. So our sensitivity to SOD is genetically modified to a large extent. It gives insight, this test gives insight to the body's responsiveness to SOD intake, and if this might spike your blood pressure levels. So if, let's say, you have in your family, cases of high blood pressure, your genes might confirm that you as an individual might need to reduce your salt intake. It doesn't matter whether it's, Himalayan pink salt, sea Celtic salt, it's just the sodium that genetically may not be that good for you. So again, if you're at an age which is showing me that you have unbalanced blood pressure, then we might need to check the salt intake of that person. So again, another precious knowledge. So everything said so far is showing us that having our genes tested, it's like the first step of understanding your health individually. I think, as I said in the previous slide, it's just chaotic at the moment when it comes to dietary recommendations. For me, it's this avalanche of information. It's people who are getting even more stressed, more confused, what to do, what to choose, what to eat, how to eat. Is this good for me? But this person is doing well eating this diet, but this person is not doing well. So what do I do? But for me, genetic testing helps find out what to do, how much of one thing is good for me and how much of another thing is not good for me. So here I've just written up a summary of the different DNA tests that I do with my clients. We've got the DNA health, which is a general overview of oxidative stress, detoxification in the body, how this all works, inflammation. So you can see whether you're prone to, bone problems, detoxification problems, how well you metabolize alcohol as well, how well you do with pollutants from the environment like smoke, cigarettes. It can all be checked with the DNA testing. We've got the DNA Mind. It's a very good test to see how well your brain functions genetically, whether you might be predisposed to having issues with moods, mood swings, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's disease. These can all be checked. Some people have issues with their dopamine and serotonin receptors. And if we check this with our DNA test, we can then see whether this person might be having depression, for example. When it's very easy, knowing the genes and how they interact, I can prescribe different nutrients for this person, because some people may not need serotonin, others may need more of it. Some people are very sensitive to serotonin and may have very bad effects. So it really depends. We have the DNA estrogen. So for all the ladies out there, this is my favorite one, to see whether you might have issues with the way you metabolize estrogens from the environment. Many women have reproductive health issues, polycystic ovaries, irregular periods. This is so crucial here to take your DNA estrogen to see if you might have issues. I've seen it in many of my clients with fertility problems or female hormonal issues. Once we check how they do with DNA estrogen, we do a few dietary interventions, and here we go. No issues with periods. They can get pregnant. It's just amazing knowledge for women here. You know, you can see if you're at risk of getting breast cancer. And if you find this at a young age, how precious it is to then go and change your lifestyle and, you know, do preventative medicine. We have DNA skin, again, for the ladies, quite good to see whether your skin might actually need products with more antioxidants or not. Again, it checks how your skin reacts to different interventions, so you can choose better skincare products for yourself. A very good one, you know, when it comes to losing weight, or even many, you know, people who are training for bodybuilding competitions, they can see with DNA diet how well they react to more fat or more carbs. The whole, you know, debate we have at the moment, do I need more fat or more carbs? Do I cut out on carbs? Do I go keto? Where actually with DNA diet, we can check whether you do well with carbs. We can check whether you do well with fats or not. We can check whether you're sensitive to sugar intake. We can also check your circadian rhythm, whether you should be careful when you have more sleep or less sleep, when you change time zones. This is all very important. With DNA sport, especially for people doing lots of exercise, we can check whether you do well on more high intensity aerobic exercises or low intensity ones, more like resistance training. We can also check with DNA sport how well you recover from exercise, especially for athletes. We can see whether you need more support when it comes to inflammation, because if there is high inflammatory response here, you might recover harder from your workouts. So we can check and make sure we help your body with recovery after the different exercise you do. With DNA sport, there's also recommendations about the types of activities, the types of exercise you need, and how much per day and per week. And the final one, med check. Now, especially with the sort of increased use of antibiotics, it's a high need to see how your genes react to different medication. You know, for young people, this may not be important at the moment, but if you find out this, it's kind of important for the future, because if in the future you get any sort of disease and there might be a need for the usage of antibiotics, the medcheck will see genetically which antibiotics do well with your genes, whether there is resistance, whether you might do, you know, better, or you might be better off with some others when it comes to medication. So again, for me, genetic testing is like the baseline. When I know how my genes interact with the environment, then I know how to change my environment. Then I know how to eat, what lifestyle to have, when I can maybe allow myself a few treats here and there. Maybe I can allow myself, you know, more caffeine, more alcohol. It just all depends. Some people do very well with alcohol. You can check it with the genes, and you can kind of have this baseline so you know what to change when you're looking after your health. So for me, it's just precious knowledge.
I think fascinating, absolutely fascinating topic, Maya, and nutrigenomics. I think there are questions coming up. So I'm just going to stop sharing and people can ask questions. We are, so let's just see. Okay. So there's a question, what kind of, I think somebody's trying to understand the type of, do you use ancestry DNA, 23andMe, or another genetic testing and run it somehow? That's the question. What kind of, 23andMe is a company in US which is very popular for DNA testing.
Yes.
And then they're asking, to what degree can we assume accuracy of what the software says our genes are efficient and not efficient with?
So the first part about the company I use DNA Life.
DNA Life? Okay. Is
Yes.
that a UK company? That's a
Uh,
UK company.
no. Basically, I do the testing through Nordic Labs. So Nordic Labs, they are all throughout the world. So they're in many different locations. I mean, if you check Nordic Labs and DNA Life, yeah.
And okay, all right. And they're in US also? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yes. I mean, they have labs throughout the world, and DNA Life is the main system they use.
Maya, we can't hear you. I don't know what happened. Maya, we couldn't hear you. Your voice.
Hello,
Can you? Yeah, now it's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay. So I use DNA Life. Can you hear me now?
Yes. So, okay, so you use the DNA Life, and then the next part of the question is, to what degree can we assume accuracy of what the software says our genes are efficient and not efficient with? So they're trying to understand the accuracy of the test that any of these companies are doing, and even DNA Life for that matter.
So personally, I did my DNA Life training in Denmark with one of their teachers, or the person who does the training. He's trained in DNA analysis, and I've seen firsthand how the laboratory works. I've talked to the owner. They use state-of-the-art facilities, and they retest. Once they do the first round, they then retest to make sure it's all the same and there are no discrepancies. I've used them for many years. The teachers I've trained with as well, all in the UK and abroad in America, they've all used them. And with me, because I've personally tried it on myself as well. I've tried it. Yeah, I've tried some of the tests twice, because when I first started doing DNA testing was at the beginning of my career, and I did it just for my own curiosity. People were still new to it. A couple of years later, I did the training, so I retested myself again. Everything was the same. And I had issues with my female hormones. So once I figured out what was wrong genetically, where my weaknesses were, I then helped my body to become stronger in these areas, and my issues just started to go away. So for me, I am able to learn my weaknesses. I can also see proof that this is the case in my family, because what came up, for example, on my DNA testing was a high priority on inflammation, like blood pressure, inflammation, antioxidants. Also, I can say with my father, for example, he just he had stroke last year. It's all good now. He's in good health, but he had high blood pressure for many, many years. My brother, my mom, they're all with high blood pressure. And I come up with high inflammatory response and lots of areas saying that I need to be careful with my blood pressure. I'm at perfect health now. I never thought I would have high blood pressure. I thought my parents had high blood pressure issues because of their lifestyle. Well, it turns out they had it genetically in them, and then their lifestyle is what kind of provoked this gene to be expressed and cause issues. My mom as well, she had a small tumor on her ovaries. And when I did my DNA testing, I also learned that the enzyme responsible for the detoxification of estrogen is not functioning properly in my body. So my mom's cancer was caused by that, by the fact that she had more estrogens in her body, and then she had to get it all removed. And of course, now with me being way younger, I know, yes, from my mom, I've seen it, but also I've got it confirmed in my genes that my body is not able to metabolize estrogen effectively. I also, when I had issues, I did the Dutch test. If you have come across that, it's a very good comprehensive test to see your hormonal levels in terms of female hormones, in terms of cortisol levels, adrenal glands. So when I check it, I also saw that the pathway where I have my estrogen detoxified was not working properly. So on the test, I had high bad estrogens. So I knew this genetically. I did the
Yeah.
test and I saw that on the actual test, right at the moment when I had the issues, I had bad estrogens in my body. So then I was like, aha, so because I'm not having this enzyme working properly, that's why I have the bad estrogens. So I went back and I gave my body the cofactors and I
Yeah.
gave my body more glutathione. And here we go. My body was able to get rid of the bad estrogens. So now I know moving forward, I'm not very well with getting rid of bad estrogens. So I need to know where these sources of bad estrogens are in the environment, avoid them and support this enzyme, support glutathione production in my body to make sure it's all working properly. That's all. So it's kind of giving you this power. So you know where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and you can just play around them and improve your health, look after your health. So it's kind of, I think, giving you this power to be your own healer sometimes, to be responsible for your health because you know your weaknesses, you know your strengths, and you just work with them.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, the follow-up question on that is, I mean, that's a very fascinating story that you shared about your family history on family. Thank you so much for doing that. With someone is asking, with changes in lifestyle, including targeted supplements and appropriate foods, which we've been talking about, with modern understanding of epigenetics, is it possible for someone with two variants, two genes switched off, to revert one or both variants back to what an original test would deem normal? Or is this not possible?
So I mean, you cannot change your genes, but you can
Yeah,
turn them on or off. So if, from what I'm understanding, so if let's say you've got the, let's say bad genes, so you've got the one which is not functioning well, right? So
yeah,
if your lifestyle is supporting kind of, bad health habits, and if your lifestyle is not that optimum, you're gonna turn this gene off. You're gonna turn it on. So you're gonna turn it on. So this gene will then express itself in your life. However, if you change your lifestyle, the gene can be turned off. Yes, genes can be on and off, on and off. It just all depends on the environment. But you cannot change what you got from mom and dad, but you can
yeah,
change whether you put it on or off. Yeah,
yeah.
you can change the switch.
My God, that's amazing. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, Maya. Yeah, that's great. So someone's saying selenium alone will work for that type of DNA who needs it? Question mark. Uh, I think she's trying to understand, what would selenium alone will work for what type of DNA who needs it? Improved diet is the only way at the moment? Question mark.
Right. So basically, if on your DNA tests I discover that there
Yeah,
is an issue with this enzyme, which is selenium dependent, then I'll
yeah.
go and check your selenium levels.
I
So
see.
yeah, so it's gonna depend. I mean, I usually use supplementation. I like to use ionic selenium because it's very well absorbed by the body. But it depends. I mean, if let's say you also have issues with your thyroid, uh, I mean, because you have low selenium, so if it's very, very low, and then you're not just having symptoms of low antioxidant activities, but you also have more symptoms of selenium deficiency, like the thyroid issues, then I'll probably supplement rather than just relying on foods. Again, it will depend how well it will depend on how well your digestive system is working. So if you're having digestive issues, then well, I don't want to risk it. If what
Yeah.
is at stake here, I don't want to risk it and just rely on food alone. I'll just go for supplementation. So it's very individual based. That's why I like the whole area of DNA testing is so for the individual.
Correct, correct. So the follow-up to that is, you talk about the Brazilian nut. So the follow-up to that is, besides Brazilian nut, any other source from food?
Uh,
And
sa-
then, I'm sorry.
Sardines.
Okay, sardines. Okay. And then what is a balanced diet in your opinion? Not vegan diet. Can you explain how this DNA test is conducted? Where can we get it done from a nutritionist? A lot of questions for you. So let's go step by step. What is a balanced diet in your opinion? And should we even do vegan? You know, a lot of people are into vegan right now.
Right. So for me, again, your genes will actually determine whether you're going to be good whether it's going to be good for you to be vegan or not. So I'll give you an example with myself again. So I'm originally from Bulgaria. So my ancestors, they ate according to the 4 seasons. And here they relied heavily on meat products, dairy products, right? So I tried to be vegan for some time. I lived in Thailand for a couple of months. I tried and I got ill. I wasn't feeling very well. I was having lots of issues, sort of mentally, emotionally. I mean, I wasn't thinking clearly, having mood swings, etc. I just wanted to try because especially as a nutritionist, it's very important for me to see it for myself. If let's say you get someone from Norway, there it's very, very cold. These people rely heavily on fat and protein to maintain their health, their body temperature. If we go to somewhere like India or South Africa, I mean, it's very hot there. So people in the past, they relied heavily on vegetables and fruits, light foods to support their health. So bottom line is, it really depends, on your ancestors, where you're living. I mean, there is this theory, which is developed by the Western Price Foundation, a metabolic typing diet. So I do my best with people, who are already depending on their symptoms, depending on their health, to kind of teach them to follow the metabolic typing diet. The metabolic typing diet has a very good questionnaire. There's a very comprehensive one which you can do online, and it's for free. You can check you can do the questionnaire and see whether you're supposed to be more like a vegan type, so you eat more carbs as opposed to fats and protein. That's the carb type. You can be a mixed type, so you got 50-50 protein and type, 50% carbs, 50%, or you can be a protein fat type, where you eat 70% of your plate from protein and fats, and the other is from carbs. So this is where you kind of have maybe a bit of the keto diet kind of fitting in. So you can see why for some people the keto diet works, but for others it doesn't. Why the vegan diet for some people works, why for others it doesn't. I'm not against being vegan. I think it's very, very dependent upon the person, but I can say one thing. I mean, if you check the Western Price Foundation, they've done a lot of studies, and Dr. Price went to different tribes throughout the world. Many years ago, he did that study, and he found that the healthiest people, the healthiest tribes, actually ate meat and very, very little vegetables and fruits. So, I mean, the healthiest tribes, they ate meat.
That's unbelievable.
So for me to kind of be a stereotype nutritionist and tell people just do this, that, or that is just against, human nature, against nature itself. So it just depends.
So we now someone's asking, can you explain how this DNA test is conducted? You talked about it a little bit. Where can we get it done from a nutritionist?
Yes, so I mean, you can contact me afterwards, because it needs to be through a registered practitioner. I mean, I've done the training, so it was a couple of days training, and I know how to read the results and explain to you in a way that you can understand it, because it's kind of complex, as you've seen. And then, of course, we can check, where, depending on your location, which way would be the best for you to get the tests. I mean, they use DHL as well for deliveries, the lab, depending on where you are. I mean, for example, here if I have clients in Bulgaria, we just get the tests shipped from Denmark or UK. It just depends. It comes within a day, and it's a swab test. So it's very easy to do at home. It's a swab test you do in the mouth for 30 seconds on each side. Very easy. You put the sample in the bag, and That's
Yeah.
how you.
And we are going to be offering this service with the collaboration with Maya. I just want to say that, this Nutrigenomics, it's fascinating. So we can get you more details. I've written our email as well, and we can send an email. And that's exactly what someone is saying, that can it be done remotely? You answered that, and the cost and all, we let you know. We're just working with Maya. A sample of saliva, she said that it's enough, right? That's what you said.
Yeah,
That.
yeah, it's sample of saliva. And I can also say what I love about DNA Life is that
Yeah,
they're very cost effective. They're,
yeah,
they're very affordable, and they do lots of different packages. So you can get all 6 tests. I mean, I've
yeah,
done them all in a
yeah,
package, and
yeah.
it's just amazing. It can be
Yeah,
really, good saving.
yeah. And we were going to work with the Maya and DNA Life, and maybe we can get a better deal for our viewers, if we are doing so many, sending so many clients, right, for testing. So stay tuned. We will let you know. If you're interested, you can let me know, and then, I'll get you all the details anyway. Okay, so then did you say change time zone for DNA diet remedy? Did you talk about that? The time zone part of it?
Yes, yeah, yes. Actually, I mean, in the DNA diet, you can check how sensitive is your circadian rhythm. For
Okay,
example,
got
yeah,
it. Yes. You talked about that. That the DNA test, the circadian rhythm. Yeah, that's
yes.
interesting.
For example, I had a client, and his mom, had very set bed routine. She would always go
Yeah,
to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. So her circadian rhythm was very sensitive. So when she travels to different time zones, she
yeah.
can't adjust. She just can't.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
very,
yeah,
very hard. So, I mean, for me, I'm the opposite. So I can easily adjust to different time zones. So again, that's good knowledge. You can make preparation
yeah,
before you
yeah.
travel.
A lot of women will be interested in the DNA skin test. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. So another one is serotonin and food. Would diet level up serotonin?
Yes, basically with serotonin, you have to be very careful if you take it as a supplement. Yes, you can get it through food. The first thing to remember with serotonin is to make sure your gut functions well. It's around 90% of your serotonin is found in the gut. So if you have any digestive issues, uh, kind of, probably you're not going to get the serotonin up to the brain barrier and into your cells, and you may not get the uplifting effect you're looking for. Hello? 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 Ah, can you hear me?